CTO here at Schools Insurance Authority. We're an insurance company that serves the school districts of California primarily. So we offer all lines of insurance, from cyber to property and liability, and we are involved in really safeguarding the schools and really returning a lot of that taxpayer dollar back to the constituents. So by being a really good risk pool. So yeah, Iran.
Thank you, Mo, and good evening. Thank you for the introduction and actually hosting this entire webinar. By the way, I'm going to be together with Checkmarx at the Gartner Summit next week in DC. So looking forward to meeting anyone that's attending, either from the audience or from the community here. As you mentioned, I'm part of Checkmarx and author, and as a matter of fact, part of the framework for today's webinar is actually going to be around a paper that I've recently published around LLM application security, basically governing AI-driven risk across the software lifecycle. And if you have been living under a rock and haven't heard about, Anthropic Mythos and OpenAI's Daybreak, all these very frontier LLM models that can actually uncover a lot of security vulnerabilities. This is definitely one of the, in my mind, biggest changes and transformation in the entire application security landscape. And it has a lot of implications on software development, on software security, and many more. And the paper that I've written actually looks at a few things. The first one is the exploit economy, okay? And what it means is that you can actually look at a working CVA that is exploited, costing like $1, okay? And I'm not exaggerating. This is what Mythos and the likes are able to say. And it only takes about 15 minutes. So with a bunch of tokens in 15 minutes, you can actually take a security vulnerability, can be a legacy security vulnerability. Mythos identified over 10,000 security issues from Mozilla Firefox to other systems and open source libraries. And this actually means that if up until recently we were looking at security vulnerabilities in terms of severity, priority, criticality, and stuff like that, it actually doesn't matter anymore. You can look at a very low priority security vulnerability that can be exploited and impact your business regardless of the severity of this item. And this is a game changer in my mind. And what it actually means specifically to application security leaders, to application developers, AI engineers, and the likes is that, the backlog is just going to grow, because today, using AI, Anthropic, and other LLM tools, you can generate, and I think one of the recent stats that I've learned about was that only in the past 3 months, AI-generated code was tripled compared to last 3 years, if you like. So AI-generated code is the new reality. No one is fighting against this trend, but with so much AI-generated code, you're obviously introducing new security vulnerabilities. What I'm bringing into the table or to this mix is what frontier LLM models like Mythos kind of bringing from the legacy backlog into the pipeline, basically, actually creating a huge technology debt for any engineer, and this is where things are becoming very, very challenging. So throughout this webinar, I would like to use some of the things that I've written in the white paper as kind of a framework for our discussion, talking about the new threats, the backlogs, why LLMs cannot defend the entire agentic development lifecycle, the trade-offs that you need, and also hopefully will give you, myself and Mo, will give you a best practice or kind of a blueprint for success across what we are calling, at least in Checkmarx, the 4 control points throughout the new agentic development lifecycle. So as we are jumping into this webinar, I would like to start with a short poll asking, the audience, because I think your response to this poll will actually be very, very interesting throughout the remainder of this webinar. And what I'm actually asking you, are you concerned, and in what level of concern do you have with what I've just described, the backlog of security issues that can be now exploding with LLM tools like Mythos, plus the new novel security findings coming from AI generated code? So how I'd like to see the distribution between your level of concern. I have my own kind of suspicious on what will be the response, but I will wait for the poll to close and see how it goes. And while we are waiting, Mo, what's your? I'm interested and curious to see what, as a CTO, what's your anticipation? What will be the level of concern?
It's just starting to grow exponentially, and that's just the reality of what's happening because, as you said, in the last few years, the amount of code that's been written it's just exploding because by orders of magnitude, right? So now one person can manage a code base of 150,000 lines, where that used to take a team of engineers, and many years to kind of generate in a way that was usable. So it's accelerated our ability to do things. Like from a CTO perspective, has empowered us, immensely to do things. But I think that's the tip of the iceberg. And if you look below, there's a lot going on. For example, code quality and all of these things, the same problems we had before, except the scale is a scaling problem. It just like vulnerabilities in the past, now vulnerabilities are another scaling problem because the time to exploit is reduced incredibly. But now you also have another scale, which is the amount of code that is being written is exponentially growing. So you have kind of two problems that are both kind of compounding. And if you think about that, that's a big problem. And I don't think it's well understood by everyone. And there's a lot of talk about using AI to help like remediate the problem. Don't worry, we'll just have AI take a look at it. Obviously, that is that has so many problems with it, right? Like, for example, the indeterministic problem, and I'm sure we'll get into that, but that's what's happening in the field, right now.
Spot on. And I think, the audience seems to agree with you. I think we are seeing a distribution in the answers between high and critical and high, almost 50-50, which is not surprising. This is what I actually anticipated. I was more towards the critical because, to your point, Mo, when we should not expect AI to fix the problem that it actually creates. Okay, it might be able to help sometimes prioritize, but it cannot do the full governance, security fixing in a deterministic manner that will give you the right confidence, especially when you're dealing with enterprise applications. This is a very risky pattern. And by the way, this actually brings us to the next question. And I will hand it over to you, Mo. And what I'm interested to learn from you and your experience, your vast experience, is how does such LLM-based security findings, weaponization, are being received by an enterprise insurance organization? So obviously you are in one of the hottest enterprise market segments, insurance, obviously dealing with a lot of sensitive data and stuff like that. So how does such security findings and the risk behind them are being received within your team, CTO, development, and stuff like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's two dimensions to that. One from the internal problem that is obvious, right? The kind of thing that I spoke about, which is the code. We're starting to ask the question, build versus buy. So that's on the table again. And it used to be just just go by. It's not worth it. You just integrate your IT shop just integrates different technologies, and you outsource the problem of dealing with code to the vendor, right? And you say, hey, vendor, take care of that problem for me. And but now with the advent of AI and the ability to really move quickly and build custom applications that are fit for your organization, there's obviously this huge economic advantage to do that. And really build things that are custom tailored to your organization. And I think a lot of CTOs like myself are looking at that and saying, yes, I have a tool and I have the team to kind of do that. But the caveat there is the security side of it is thinking, well, you may have the team to build a good POC, you may have the team to deploy it, but we know that it's more code security is an ongoing process, and the problems is the acceleration of the issues. So that's one dimension, and we've just discussed that. But the other dimension is that we're an insurer. We insure cyber risk. So what does that mean when everybody starts to do the same thing that we're doing, which is building in-house code and deploying applications at scale? Well, how do you deal with that liability, right? And how do we actually gauge that? And so those are the big problems that we're facing. There's internally, and how we're going to deal with our members once they start to do this at scale, and how that's going to be controlled. So yeah.
I'm fully with you. And by the way, I keep hearing the exact same question that I asked you from my own customers. Another question that I keep hearing, and I think that's kind of, in my mind, the most interesting one, is because we mentioned, yeah, let's throw AI into the mix and make it solve the problem of, increased backlog from new and old legacy code. So can AI actually truly audit its own code, or is it structurally impossible by design? And this is a question that I've been hearing from CISOs, CTOs, and many other practitioners multiple times. And by the way, that's kind of what convinced me to write this white paper, because what I'm hearing, and I would love to hear your take on that as well, Mo, is that the instinct to solve an AI problem with more AI is actually the wrong one. And why is that? Because it's not a capability. AI is obviously very capable. As we mentioned, it generates code 3 times, 4 times, 10 times faster and at higher scale than any human being. That's a given. So no one kind of debates that AI has lack of capabilities. But from a security standpoint, AI has an architectural limitation. And what I mean by that is an LLM that actually shares the same computational boundary as a code that it produces cannot be trustworthy enough to instrument the code security that it actually generates. And a few examples for that would be the training data, okay, that this LLM is using to generate the code. Mo, you are in an insurance company. To solve a security issue within your source code, Mythos and others would definitely need the deeper context within your sometimes sensitive customer data and stuff like that. It will need, obviously, the deterministic layer. It needs to understand deeply the code and the use cases behind the execution of the code, and so many different things. And as a general rule, what we believe, especially my chief product officer is saying it day in and day out, you need the separation between church and state. This is the way to do security, especially in an AI-generated code reality. So no one is taking away the power and the respect for AI. That's the reality right now. But what we are preaching for is to have a hybrid approach where you take the power of AI, that probabilistic power, if you like, the reasoning, and you bake into it the deterministic layer that gives you the right attackability, the exploitable path to your production environment. What actually matters, the highest fidelity results that you can trust, so you can solve business critical issues. What's your take on that, Mo?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's hard. It's hard to argue with what you just said. That is that is the way I look at it as well. Okay, but where I would say the distinction I make is the everybody thinks that AI is like a catch-all which will solve all problems. And it looks like that, right? Because it's doing a lot. Like you said, it's building code. It's solving problems for us that we only dreamt of a few years ago. But this problem of code security and many other problems, it goes back to the fundamental constraints of an AI model, right? An AI model has a couple of key constraints. One is it's a hallucination problem. I think that's the biggest problem that we deal with, right? Then the second is the limited context window that an AI can be coherent. So we have a decoherence problem where once the amount of context it has starts to increase, then you get decoherence and the output starts to falter. Okay. And then there's also this memory context problem. The LLM, every time you prompt it, only knows to complete the text that you've given it, right? It doesn't have any idea of what happened before, any context about what your business was doing before, the context of what your business is doing today, and what it will be doing tomorrow. All of that stuff has to be baked into that limited context window when you kind of prompt it. So the way the industry has kind of solved this problem, or is trying to solve this, is through more and more deterministic code, which they call the harness, right? The harness is the kind of mechanism that allows an LLM to do the fantastic things that it's been doing right now, like writing code in an agentic way. But this harness is still very limited. It's still in its infancy. It's really 2026 where this stuff has taken off, right? But if you think about it, the harness is exactly what you're talking about. It's that deterministic tooling, that knowledge base. A lot of people call it RAG, but RAG is the obvious thing, but there's more to it. Building the scaffolding around the LLM is really the key to what the future of AI looks like. It's where the LLM is kind of an engine, and you build a car around the engine, right? And so that's a very but today we're treating it like I wrote an article on this. We're treating it like a horse. We're treating like the LLM like a horse because we recognize it's a wild animal, right? It's something that has to be tamed, so we put a harness on it, and that is giving us some capabilities. Like now we can ride the horse, which is great. But what we really want is we want a car, which has safety features, which has I can start and stop it. It's not going to run away. I can predict that when I go back to my car, I'm going to find it. I can turn it on, and of course, it needs maintenance. So I think the conceptual model has to change, but that requires all the old tooling that we created over many years. So we created all this old tooling, which we can't just throw away because we've got this new shiny thing. We have to integrate all of that back into the LLM and kind of create a system around it, a control plane, right?
I love the definition of the control plane. It's actually a nice segue to the next item. But let's just try to summarize up until now, because I think we scared everyone in the audience, right? There is a security growing depth because of frontier LLM models that can identify high-scale legacy security issues that can very easily be exploited fast and at lower cost. They join the AI-generated code risks that are bringing new, novel security threats from the entire AI supply chain, whether they're LLM poisoning, data, hallucination that you mentioned earlier, and we can go on and on. Agents that are being used as offensive instead of kind of supporting your activities throughout the pipeline. We actually heard from the audience in one of the first polls, teaser, we have another one coming soon, that the audience is actually concerned about this growing backlog of things that is coming. We actually then segue to this hybrid approach, looking at the goodness that you can get from AI, plus the deterministic that you can get from this independent control plane. So this brings us to the next phase in this webinar. And the next phase talks about basically what's required. Okay, this is kind of where we segue to the we've scared everyone in the room. Now, what actually is required to maximize the value of this agentic AI and the innovation that they brings into the table, and kind of how good looks like. So with that, I think if it's okay, Mo, I'll give just my point of view. I would love to hear your point of view, especially, from a CTO role changes, before AI and after AI, what has changed, and what kind of things you can enforce within your updated, if you like, position, having AI on your side. So my point of view from what's required to maximize the value is you need, obviously we talked about the hybrid approach, right? You need to have deterministic combined with the probabilistic going hand to end. But where do you need these things? Okay, I mentioned in my first sentence during the webinar that you need the full coverage across different control points. Okay, AI can generate the code today in Cursor, Windsurf, AWS Kiro, VS Code, JetBrains. It can generate code in IDEs, but there are agentic tools that can actually generate code without UI. Okay, so this is your first control point. Where you generate the code, you need to defend and have kind of either an agentic AppSec or some kind of a guardrail. You talked about the harness. This is one area that you need to focus on. The second one is going to be your pull request, your build and CI. That's kind of your second gate into the pipeline. And you need to, obviously, whatever got skipped in the creation of the code needs to be captured in the build process, in GitHub, in your Jenkins, whatever tools you're using. I agree with you, Mo, that people are still going and should be using existing tools. Guess what? AI is using these tools behind the scenes as well, right? Claude is using Playwright for test creation, and so on and so forth. The third one is, in my mind, the most important one, and this is the AI supply chain, okay? Because this kind of brings you all the new threat vectors coming from LLMs, MCP servers, agents, data sets, AI SDKs. You can go on and on. So when you're dealing with all these growing amount of security risks throughout the AI supply chain, you also need to protect them, meaning you need an AI BOM, AI bill of material, that gives you all the inventory, what's being used by which developer, and you need to put policies around that. If you know that Opus, whatever version or some other agent is risky, you need to block it. You need to put policies that can govern throughout your entire organization. And last but not least is the runtime protection, because AI is nice and can be defended in the pre-production environment. You also want to understand what's actually attackable in production at runtime, obviously pre-production, but in the runtime environment. And this is what you usually call DAST, dynamic application security testing. You need to understand what is actually slipping into production to protect your own customers. So the hybrid approach with the highest fidelity results across the 4 control points that I mentioned, in my mind, that's kind of what I would say is the required approach here. Happy to hear your thought about that, Mo.
Yeah, what you said is correct. I think where I would expand on that is that from a CTO's perspective, what I see is that there's a shift, okay, that what we call software development, the entire software industry today is kind of like creating software for humans to interact with it and get some kind of job done. And that's basically the kind of software we have been building because that's been the mode. What is shifting now is the way we interact with computing technology, right? Where I think very soon we will not build software for humans, we'll build software for agents. So what you're talking about is that, the things around it, like DAST and SAST and all of that, we will expect that not a human operator is doing that. We will expect that a human operator will ask an agent to do something on their behalf using some of these tools like SAST or DAST or whatever it is, right? Even something like Salesforce, some SaaS application. So I think the the shift is towards an agentic development lifecycle rather than a software development, which is the same thing. It's just semantic, right? It's still software, but we're building agents primarily, and I think that's where the develop. And in fact, that's what we see here at our company. When we're building something today, we're not building it. We're building it as agentically as possible, in the sense that our users simply come to the table with an idea, and the agent carries out a lot of the the legwork for them and produces them an output. So that means most of the software we're building is for the AI to interact with and use in an agentic way. Okay, so what is the problem there that I see is that if we allow agents to proliferate in the way that we have built them today, which is we use the LLM and we think of the LLM like a brain, then we have a harness, which is the kind of control mechanism, and then we have the tooling, the MCP tooling that we built. That is going to cause a lot of chaos because, as you said, the LLM, if we consider it as a brain, it's not a complete system. It has all this problems we've talked about, the constraints, the hallucinations, the prompt injection, all of those things, right? So what we really need is the LLM. We need a control plane built around the LLM, which allows us to direct the LLM's traffic, use it more like a generator. It generates some text, generates things, ideas, but then there's a scaffolding around it, which allows for memory recall, so persistence of state, persistence of idea, and the ability to reason through a source of truth, and things of those natures. So and then log every interaction. So right now we're not logging any of the interactions. So there needs to be good auditable traces of what the LLM is actually doing, the thought process, everything. So it can be reconstructed when needed. And then you can build the other things around it, like the tools for agentic framework. So that's my take on it. And what I see as the danger that's coming is this proliferation of agents without actually shifting the mindset to saying, okay, this is not a brain. It's more of an engine, and then we have to build the brain around it. And I believe that's the fundamental shift that industry has to make in order to get to a point where this is a safe tool. Right now, the reason I believe that people think that AI does so many great things is because we outsource a lot of the cognitive functions of the LLM to our own brain. So we're driving it in the sense that, we get an output, we say, no, that's garbage, give me another one. And we kind of drive it to a goal. So we have a goal in our mind. The LLM also needs that scaffolding to allow goal-oriented movement and things like that. So these things have to be built around the LLM before we can, and that's what I consider the control plane in my mind.
I love it, and I think one word that I will just add on top of your approach would be orchestration. How can you orchestrate all these agents so they actually do what they need to do, but with full visibility, audit trails, and control, so you're actually taking advantage of AI without actually bringing more risk into your business. So, and I've seen one or two questions coming in. We'll try to address them very shortly. But this is a nice segue towards our second and last, I promise, poll of the day. And this poll, if you can kick it off, talks about the single biggest unlock to safety scaling agentic AI brings to your environment. And I think it actually touches on some of the things that you just mentioned, Mo. I don't know if you want to take this poll and just give some background behind it.
Yeah. So, so what is the biggest problem is I think agents without the proper scaffolding around it is the biggest problem. And then you went one step further. It's like, how do you orchestrate once you build a singular agent with the right scaffolding? How do you then make them work together, multiple agents work together to achieve a goal, right? And without them stepping on each other. So that's the next step, right? Is the orchestration of agents. There's an orchestration that has to happen internally within the agent, and then orchestration between agents. And so there's a lot that needs to be built out before we can release this into the wild, but I don't know if it will be fully baked before it gets out there. So that's the huge risk that I see. Yeah.
And while I see more this question, we should have probably given all of the above as an option here because, and I'm not trying, there is no option like that, so I'm not guiding the witness here. I actually think that there is a mix of things here that organizations, practitioners should be considering. We talked earlier, you talked about the independent control plane. I talked a bit about the hybrid approach, deterministic and probabilistic approaches. I also talked earlier about how fast can you remediate, from a coverage perspective, remediate all this backlog that's just growing at high scale and velocity, because otherwise you're just either going to lose control or you're going to expose yourself to business risks. So I think the mix of some of these things in my mind consists of a good application security strategy for the next or for the AI era, if you like. So with that, Paul, and I don't know if we have the results to share, but again, the results are quite interesting. So a majority were around independent control plane, and the other part were about governance and AI bomb. Audit trails, I think we talked about it in your previous approach. So I think this is a good mix of responses. So by the way, thank you everyone that's in the audience that are participating, and some of you are sending questions, so I also appreciate that. I do have one or two more questions, but maybe let's try and get one from the audience, if that's okay. So I see a question here. While outsourcing software development transfers operational execution to a vendor, does it inherently multiply our third-party risk management and intellectual property exposure, given that ultimate systematic liability cannot be outsourced? So this is a very good question, because, by the way, you don't need to even go further to put liability on a third-party vendor, because AI, for that sake, is the third-party vendor right? Claude is generating the code, but your customer is not going to blame Claude or your third-party vendor. It's going to come to you as the provider of the technology, of the software. If something goes wrong, if you're insecure or you have quality issues, or some of the things are simply not working well. So to this question, I think that like any other contract between yourself and a third-party vendor, you need to have governance and visibility into the software that your third party is using. If it's using LLMs, agents, MCP servers, other open source libraries and frameworks, it needs to secure its own domain as a service provider, okay? And you need to have all the audit trails and everything because you want to protect yourself as the one that is in charge or responsible for the artifacts that you are producing. So to your question, you need to demand that as the owner from your outsourced software vendor, knowing that AI might be bringing you some unpredictable security issues that you never seen before. So if AI is generating the code using this third-party vendor, you need to have a clear understanding of what this code actually is doing, documentation, versioning, audit trails, everything that you can think of, so you can actually stand behind your deliverables. I'm interested in your take, Mo, as a CTO, what you would recommend the guy that asked this question.
Yeah, so the question is literally build versus buy and the risk between that, right? And why the CTO is now moving towards. So if you're a CISO, you're still on the buy side because you want to maybe outsource some of that risk, but you'd have to put the right guardrails in place. But that's all contract negotiation, right? You can put that in and try and get your way. That's one technique that we do to, when I was a CISO, certainly that I did that was try to get that language in there so that, if the vendor is not taking the correct steps, we can get clawbacks of money, hold them liable, things of that nature. Now, your mileage may vary on that, but then on the other side of it is okay, you chose to build. You're like, to your point, there's no recourse to go to the LLM providers and say, hey, your model created bad code and now I have a vulnerability problem. No, that's your responsibility. It's and you've employed a tool to build some code. Now it's it's on you to take on the task, which is becoming more intractable by the day, to then read all that code. I know from our perspective, we've written hundreds of thousands of lines of code for our internal stuff, and I don't have a team to read every single line of code. We are using tools and intelligent ways to make sure we're keeping that all together, but that introduces a huge risk. So I think the build side to me is riskier still, but we're taking the risk. We're accepting that risk because of the speed at which we can deliver and the quality of outcomes to the business that we believe, since this is new territory, that we can provide. And so we're taking some risk on by building, which I think that's riskier actually. So.
And more, and I'm using daily Claude Code, and I think everyone that ever used AI and Claude or other LLMs, I'm reading you from the platform, right? Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double check responses. Okay, so the AI is telling you I'm not responsible for anything that's coming from my LLM models, training data, whatever. You need to make sure that you are in control across the entire. I mentioned previously the control points. It's on you whether you are outsourcing it, whether you're using a lower level LLM model or the most frontier. These things are risky by definition, and they admit that they are that risky. So it's on you to be the responsible adult, if you like, and put all the right guardrails and visibility into what's being used. And just from kind of before, I think we get more questions from the audience. I see one important question that just came in. So when we talk about AI validation, so AI pen testing and validation, what are some of the AI red teaming approach that you recommend? I can take it if you want to start more this time. By all means, be my guest. How strong are you with AI red teaming?
Yeah, like AI validation, red teaming. I think this is one of the last things you probably want to outsource is that to AI. I think if you're using AI to build, I mean, that's the crux of this entire conversation, right? If you're using AI to build, I think you can divert a lot of your resources to the checking and the penetration, the testing side of it. So we still do a largely human-controlled red teaming and penetration testing and application testing. You can use a lot of automated tools, and that's what we have been doing. But I don't know if I'm ready to do AI validation. That's not really my thought at this point. My thought is use AI to build and build quickly, and then get your humans, divert that resource to doing the checking, and use clever automated tools. Of course, you can use AI to help. AI, when we say AI, we mean LLMs, right? Non-deterministic tools to help with that process. But the automated tools are still giving us a lot of good results, and we should use those.
And just to build
tools.
And just to build on that, I think, and actually I've used it in my just recent activities. You work with one AI model, you ask it to generate, let's say, a class in Java or some Python code. You can ask it 5 times the same model with the same prompt. You'll get 5 different outputs. Okay, so you want to make sure that you are validating across, not just across the same model with the same prompt, and making sure that you are getting a solid response and output that you can use with confidence. I would actually mix different AI models to make sure that I'm as confident as I can what I'm getting. And you can actually call it human in the loop, because we are, as humans, we are the one that are instructing these LLMs on what to do. So be smart, okay? Think about your attackers, the bad actors, if you like, anything that can compromise your software, and try to make sure that you are creative in your prompts, creative in your security requirements, and validate across different models, different prompts, and different use cases as well. And I talked about the 4 control points. You need to validate your outputs across these 4 control points, because something that you didn't capture in the coding phase, you might catch in the PR, in the pull request, in the build, or throughout the supply chain using the AI bill of materials, or God forbid, if it slipped to the runtime environment, pre-production, you have the last chance to identify issues to make sure that nothing can be used against you. So these are some of the things that I think are good to consider with what, just building on top of what Mo just said. And I'm getting another question here. What tools do you recommend for software composition analysis, SCA, to ensure AI-generated code doesn't contain stolen and copyrighted snippets? That's a sophisticated question. So as a vendor, I'm not going to pitch Checkmarx, but Checkmarx obviously has an SCA, a software composition analysis tool. When you look at SCA with AI in mind, think about it. SCA, software composition analysis, looks at all the open source, the packages, the libraries, but AI also adds dependencies on these third-party components, malicious packages, and you name it. So I would definitely I wouldn't call it RFP, I will assess the SCA, because the SCA of last year is not good enough, okay? You need to have an SCA that can take both the malicious packages, the open source libraries, together with everything that AI generates, fixes, and depends on, and it can be open source MCP servers that are out there, other AI SDKs, which are now kind of part of the mix. So an SCA that is very modern, that can use or protect against both legacy, current, and future AI pipelines and malicious packages will definitely be my recommendation. Again, as a vendor, Checkmarx is doing that. There are other tools and vendors that are doing it in the market right now. I can take it offline with the guy that asked it and provide him with more tools, of course. Let's see. Do we have any additional questions that we haven't touched on? I'm asking our host here just to make sure that we are not leaving anyone in a Friday afternoon with a kind of an open question. That's the worst. Okay, I see a question. Okay, and that's okay. So I think I've seen the question. I think the first and the second one in this thread I've answered. That's about the third-party vendor and internal development and third-party software. I think we talked about visibility, audits, taking responsibility into what you are instructing the vendors. The only thing that I think we haven't touched was, given that standard enterprise controls rarely address granular file and code level entitlements for automated processes, how are cyber insurance, I guess it's directed to you, more underwriters adapting their policy exclusion? That's a long question. And premium structures to price in this systematic vulnerability. I don't know if you can capture that one more.
I can tell you that the insurance market in general moves very slowly. So you know, don't expect these we are thinking about it. I know that because, you know, our brokers, we buy from Lloyd's. So, you know, we see what's happening on the ground, you know, in real time. And even the large companies like Chubb and Aon, or Aon is a broker, but the cyber insurance market is soft right now. So we haven't put those things in. I think once we start to see, it's more reactive. So once we start to see claims associated with AI risk kind of becoming real claims, then the market will shift and the requirements will change. And what those requirements are, it's too nebulous right now for me to give you a good answer, like a concrete answer. I don't know what those require, other than the obvious security guardrails that we were just talking about. But eventually, just like today, your cyber insurer requires you to have a certain list of practices like MFA and things like that. That will, how you deal with AI and agents will have to be documented, and there will be a certain checklist. But today, in 2026, the cyber market is very soft, meaning that's insurance speak for they're not going to ask you for too many requirements, and you can buy openly on the market without too much grief.
Amazing. Thank you for that, Mo. And there was a question about Checkmarx Zap. We can support everything that we are just discussing. You can take it also offline with me if you have a more technical question around that. But I think with that, I had an amazing time here. Thank you to the community that hosted both myself. Mo, thank you so much for spending part of your Friday with me. I had a great time, and I hope everyone enjoyed this discussion and took some notes. I hope so, and it was helpful. If you have any other questions to either me or Mo, by all means, feel free to send them our way. And again, appreciate your time, guys. I had a great time.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.